So last month, it was revealed that Chechen authorities are rounding up gay men in the region, torturing them and keeping them in detainment camps. Now, one survivor who actually escaped these camps has a pretty scary tale to tell. He's anonymous in this video, but take a look.
Они говорят родителям убить своего ребенка. Типа, или вы это сделаете, или это должны делать мы. Это называется кровью смыть позор. Они мучили его где-то недели 2. Потом позвали его родителей, братьев. Те приехали, они сказали им, вот ваш парень такой-такой, разберитесь сами или разберемся мы. Они сказали, нет, это наш человек, мы сами с ним разберемся. Забрали его, отвезли в лес, убили. Похоронили там же в лесу, даже похорон не устроили. Если я вернусь домой, меня мои же и убьют.
So obviously that is a harrowing anecdote. He continued to say, we were tortured every day. Beside beatings, we were beaten several times a day with polypropylene tubes. We were tortured with electricity. He goes on to tell about how they were electrocuted and how they would hope that they would pass out so that they wouldn't continue to be electrocuted. I mean, it's just disgusting what they are doing over there. Now this abuse was first reported in April, which said that about 100 men suspected of being gay were rounded up and tortured, and that at least 3 were killed. Now, when officials were questioned by human rights groups about these practices, Alvi Kerimov, who is a spokesman for Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov, says there are no homosexuals in Chechnya. You cannot detain and persecute those who do not exist. And just to give you guys some background, this is a very conservative region. They are predominantly Muslim and are doing these horrible things. Now, some people, some of the gay men who have escaped this treatment in these camps are going over the Russian border and trying to seek refuge there. Now, the head of the Russian LGBT network says that she is in absolute shock. We have never seen anything like this. And LGBTQ activists who have been meeting with foreign diplomats are pleading that granting a visa to gay survivors of torture could be a matter of saving their lives. Russia, which also has a lot of homophobic sentiments, is their refuge, which shows you how dire the situation is.
Yeah, right. If you want to go to Russia to be treated better, it's messed up. I think we should take them. And I think it's backed by the statement, by the travel ban. The initial spirit of the president's travel ban was that we should take refugees. I mean, they did it to accept Syrian Christians, but the justification behind that was that we needed to accept Syrian Christians because they were part of a targeted group within a larger population. So if you're going to hold true to that, President Trump, this is a group within a location that is being prosecuted for, in one case, their beliefs, but in this case, who they are, their sexual proclivities, and I want to hear from the Trump administration on it.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think these people are being persecuted and in a lot of really scary ways. So the guy in the video talks about how he was in a car and I guess he was with a friend and the police just assumed that something was going on with them and arrested them both. There was one situation where a man who was detained, they went through his cell phone and found a number of another man, so then they went after him. There was all these sorts of cases where they're really hunting these people down, oftentimes torturing them to get the names of other gay men in the area, and it's frightening that this is happening in 2017. It's frightening that we are having to this is not a story that is taking over the media, and it should be, because this is terrifying. These people are putting people in detainment camps. I don't know how else. This is such a human rights violation that the fact that we're not doing anything as a country is terrifying.
We're talking to Russia about Syria. I don't understand why Russia. We know that the Chechnyan president, tyrant, dictator, possible causative homosexual man is very involved with Vladimir Putin. And why aren't we also lending a hand to the LGBT survivors within that region when why aren't we talking about them at all? And specifically
because the guy in charge is a strong man, and I respect strong men. He's taken a strong stance. That's what it seems to be, and I by no means am defending it and completely attacking it. One decision that it's very clear that Trump has made is when has he made the decision? Has he made any decision, or did it just the wind was blowing the right direction when he came up with it?
Maybe they didn't write about this in Breitbart yet.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
so go ahead.
I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I think a possible reason why people aren't talking about this within media could be that because Chechnya is a Muslim country, like a Muslim majority country, and this goes back to that whole concept that Muslims are anti-LGBT, and this religion is intolerant to the Western society, like to the Western society's way of living, and the reality is that this whole concept is homophobia. They might say that oh, we need to clear out the country of homosexuality before Ramadan. They might use that, but the reality is it's inherent. It's just homophobia in a less civilized nation, and some might be using religion as a reason to wipe out the homosexuals. But like Brett brought up a really good point. I mean, these guys are Muslim and gay, so why don't we save them?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think it's like because it's not in the part of the world that we deem like coverable by mainstream media, that they're not covering it in the same way that they would be doing it if this was taking place in like England. You know what I mean?
It's also the thing about Chechnya from the reports is that there's just Chechen separatists. That's the thing about Chechnya, and it's so hard to introduce new kinds of stories when people like know a story about a region and don't really even care about that, to care about more other kinds of issues. But I mean, the things that they've said, they call it a prophylactic sweep. That same spokesman for the ruler that you quoted before said that their relatives, the gay people's relatives, would send them somewhere from which there's no returning. Like that's.
First he's saying there's no gay people,
and he says, and then he continues to say,
and then he was like, if there were, we're trying to clear them out before Ramadan. First of all, his first statement saying that there are no gay people in the region, like that should be enough of a red flag to human rights activists that like, hey, this country is not accepting, this country is not tolerant. We need to intervene. And
then identifying some of the beginnings of this, like how it all started, you might wonder. One of the reports is that there were like 15 people that wanted to do a gay rights march, and so they applied for permits, and the permits were people said don't apply for permits because this doesn't exist. Why, you might as well have a unicorn parade because there's no unicorns in the world. And they were like, we love unicorns. Anyways, but they were like, they continued to file for the permits. They got denied, and they hoped that would spur the issue up to the EU Human Rights Court. But before that was able to happen, that's when this whole rounding up and their prophylactic.
And that's something that happens a lot in Russia as well. I think when they're trying to apply for protests, they get like denied permits and things like that. And
the thing is,
a lot of the gay people in this, a lot of the gay people in Chechnya say that they are used to sort of this discrimination and used to the way that the government treats them, and so they have only really expressed themselves who they really are in private. They often get married and have children and don't tell their families because of the rhetoric from the government officials, and I guess just rhetoric in general communities.
And in a part of the world where there's in a region where there's so much, I don't know how it's exactly called, if it's a country or if it's like a protectorate of Russia, but in that area where corruption is so rampant, if you want to suppress anybody, you just call them gay. And who's to say they aren't? And they get rounded up and sent to these camps.
I was gonna say, like, how do you determine whether someone is gay or not? On top of that, especially when the leader Ramzan Kadyrov is very clearly a closeted homosexual. But I can't stress that enough. Ramzan Kadyrov is definitely, without a doubt, a closeted homosexual.
I'm gonna start writing my names on cups just in case they start poisoning you.
Okay, but aside from that, look. I mean, that's crazy that we're living in fear that this person could possibly come and murder like a US political pundit on a.
I don't think he's gonna.
Anyway, look. But the other point I wanted to make is like, look, when Russia discriminates towards LGBT groups or even annexes, decides that they're going to take over some sort of annexed territory, so we can't really fight back with sanctions, right? It's very difficult because Russia is a massive economic power. We're in a constant proxy ball. Yeah, I mean, we're in a constant proxy war in the Middle East with Russia. So it's a little bit more difficult. But when it's Chechnya, when it's just like a little country, it should be a little bit easier to enforce some sort of humanitarian mission.
But it's within Russia.
Yeah, but it's within Russia. That's really
but as you said, it's got to be part of the discussion.
Yeah.
Our journalism drive is almost over. It ends in Trump's first 100 days. We need to hire more reporters and more watchdogs. Let's do that right now at tytnetwork.com/go.